Picture this. One morning, you quietly step back from everyone's life. Not dramatically, not in anger, just less present, less available, less reachable. You don't announce anything. You don't explain. You simply stop being the one who always calls, always checks in, always fills the silence for everyone else. You let life continue without you, and then you watch. At first, nothing happens. A few people might notice you haven't replied yet. Someone might send a short message. Someone else might say, "Bro's been offline lately." But that's it. The world doesn't pause. The rotation of people's lives doesn't slow down. No one is waiting at the door for your return. This is the beginning of Sartre's darkest lesson about human nature. People are far more absorbed in their own lives than in your existence. Sartre believed something brutally simple, that every human being is trapped inside their own consciousness, their own needs, their own desires. They see others only through the lens of how useful, entertaining, comforting, or beneficial they are. So when you step back, the role you played disappears too. And once the role disappears, people move on. It's not personal, it's human nature. People cling to convenience, not to connection. They remember presence, not absence. They value what's in front of them, not what once was. And that truth stings, because you start to realize something you never wanted to admit. Most people never cared about you. They cared about what you provided. Your attention, your presence, your emotional labor, your time, your reliability, your energy, your availability. You thought they valued you, but Sartre would say they valued the experience of you, not the person behind it. And the silence that follows your absence exposes everything. It reveals the people who only liked the benefits you brought. It reveals the friendships built on convenience. It reveals the relationships powered by habit, not love. It reveals the truth you've been avoiding. If you stop showing up, most connections collapse instantly. But here's the twist, and Sartre would insist on this. This realization is not meant to make you bitter. It's meant to make you free, because the moment you see the world as it really is, you stop begging for attention. You stop chasing validation. You stop forcing yourself into spaces where you were never valued. You stop trading your peace for the illusion of belonging. And the most important thing happens. You start living on your own terms. When you finally step back from people's lives, something strange happens. Not instantly, slowly, quietly, almost silently. The people you thought could never function without you somehow do. The ones who constantly needed your advice, they find someone else to ask. The ones who only called when they were bored, they find new ways to fill their time. The ones who said, "You're the only one I trust," they discover a new only one. And you sit there thinking, so that's all it took. A little distance, and everything rearranged itself. This is the moment Sartre's darkest truth hits you. Most people don't miss you. They miss what you did for them. It's not cruelty. It's not betrayal. It's human nature. People treat you as part of their personal world, their routine, their emotional ecosystem. Once you're no longer available, the space you occupied closes quickly. Sartre believed we create meaning for others only as long as they continue to perceive us. Once they stop perceiving us, the meaning dissolves. You begin to realize how much of your identity was built around being useful. The helper, the listener, the responsible one, the one who cared more deeply than anyone else. But here's the shadow side of being dependable. People start to treat your effort like background noise, like something that was always supposed to be there, like a service, not a gift. And once you stop offering that service, their world keeps moving. Your absence becomes a detail, not a crisis. It hurts, but it's necessary, because it forces you to face a question you've probably avoided your entire life. If people don't truly need you, then who are you when you stop trying to be needed? Most people never even try to answer that question. They cling to relationships out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being forgotten, Fear of realizing their worth was tied to constant giving. Sartre would tell you this fear is the chain that keeps people trapped in shallow connections. When you believe your value depends on others recognizing it, you become a prisoner of external validation. But when your absence goes unnoticed, you finally confront the truth. You never needed their recognition. You needed your own. You start to feel something new. Not anger, not bitterness, but clarity. You see that the world doesn't revolve around you, and it's not supposed to, but your own life does. And you've been living it as if everyone else had the authority to define your place in it. Here's the shift. When you stop trying to be someone else's important person, you begin becoming your own. And that's the beginning of real freedom, the kind Sartre believed was the core of human existence. There's a moment, after the noise dies down, after your absence becomes normal, where something unexpected happens. Someone reaches out, not because they need anything, not because they're bored, not because they want attention, but because they truly felt the difference when you stepped back. It's never the crowd, it's never the ones who constantly drained you. It's never the ones you bent over backwards for, it's always the few, the rare ones, the ones you didn't expect. This is where Sartre's philosophy takes a surprising turn. For all his talk about isolation and self-centered human nature, he also believed something subtle. Authentic relationships only appear when you stop performing. And stepping back exposes exactly that. Because once you stop showing up for everyone, you finally see who shows up for you. It's a small circle, painfully small. Sometimes just one person, sometimes none at first. And that's okay. Because the truth is, most of the people you thought were friends were simply orbiting you out of convenience. They were companions of routine, not of heart, but the few who genuinely care. They move differently. They don't guilt-trip you. They don't demand explanations. They don't make it about themselves. They just show up. A simple message. Hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Are you okay? A quiet check-in. A brief call, a moment of presence. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. And here's the part no one warns you about. Authentic connection feels unfamiliar when you've spent your whole life giving more than you receive. You're used to chasing. You're used to proving your worth. You're used to carrying relationships on your back. So when someone meets you halfway, it almost feels wrong, uncomfortable, foreign. But this discomfort is a sign that you're finally stepping into a different life. One where you're not begging for recognition, not offering yourself to people who never deserved you, not confusing usefulness with love. Sartre would call this the beginning of authentic existence, the moment you stop acting out roles and start living from the core of who you are. Because when you step away from the world that doesn't care will forget, but the world that does care will come closer. Those few people, the ones who reach out quietly, are the mirrors of who you actually matter to. Not for what you do, not for how much you give, but simply for existing. And here's the empowering twist. You don't need many of these people. You just need a few, sometimes just one. That's enough to remind you that while most connections fade when you stop performing, the real ones ignite when you stop pretending. There's a quiet shift that happens after you step back from people's lives. Not in them, in you. At first, it feels strange. You're so used to being available, being responsible, being the one who keeps everything together. Your mind keeps expecting someone to call, someone to need you, someone to pull you back into the same old patterns. But this time, nothing pulls you. And that emptiness feels uncomfortable. It feels like something is missing. But slowly, you realize what's really happening. You're finally hearing yourself. For the first time in years, maybe ever, there is space. Real space between you and the expectations of others. Space to think. Space to breathe. Space to understand what you actually want, instead of what everyone else wants from you. Sartre believed that most people never experience this space. They stay trapped in the gaze of others, constantly living as a reflection of what people expect, admire, or demand. They become characters in someone else's script, but when you step back, you stop acting. The mask slips, the performance ends, and what's left is the raw, uncomfortable truth of who you are without an audience. You start noticing the things you ignored for years, the conversations you never enjoyed, the responsibilities that drained you, the relationships you kept alive alone, the habits you built to avoid disappointing people, the dreams you abandoned because they weren't practical. You begin to see how much of your life was shaped around keeping others comfortable while you quietly shrank your own voice. And here's the surprising part. Once the noise fades, your real desires finally surface. You realize you didn't lose people. You lost distractions. You didn't lose connection. You lost obligation. You didn't lose importance. You lost roles that never belonged to you in the first place. This is the moment Sartre would call freedom, not the dramatic kind, but the internal one. The freedom of not being defined by anyone's approval. The freedom of not needing to be the hero in every situation. The freedom of claiming your life as your own. But with this freedom comes responsibility, and that's where the real challenge begins. Because now you can't hide behind excuses anymore. You can't say, I'm too busy helping everyone else. You can't say, people need me. You can't say, I don't have time to work on myself. The spotlight turns inward, and the question becomes, now that you're no longer living for others, who will you become? It's intimidating, but it's also powerful. You start making decisions purely for yourself, not to impress, not to gain approval, not to keep a relationship alive, just because it feels true. You rediscover old passions. You set new boundaries. You focus on your mental clarity, your goals, your growth. You build a life that isn't dependent on being liked or needed. And for the first time, you start feeling something real. You start feeling like you. By the time the noise of other people's expectations fades, by the time you've stepped back and seen who actually cares, by the time you've stopped performing and finally started hearing your own voice, you reach the last part of Sartre's lesson. And it's the part most people never discover. Because stepping away from others isn't really about them. It's about you. About the truth that rises once everything unnecessary falls away. Sartre believed that every human being is born into a world where meaning isn't handed to them. They create it. Not society, not friends, not relationships, not approval. You. But you can't create your own meaning while living inside the expectations of other people. You can't build your own identity while trying to be someone else's comfort, someone else's hero, someone else's background character. You can't live deliberately if you never step back long enough to ask, what do I actually want from this life? This is where the real shift happens. Because once you realize that most people move on when you're no longer convenient, you also realize something even more important. You're finally free to stop living for them, free to outgrow people who don't grow with you, free to focus your energy where it truly matters, free to build a life based on intention rather than obligation, free to stop chasing attention and start choosing purpose. And here's the truth that changes everything. When you stop depending on others to give your life meaning, you become unstoppable. You stop fearing distance. You stop fearing silence. You stop fearing being forgotten. Because you understand that being remembered was never the real goal. Being authentic is, and authenticity attracts a different type of life. Not crowded, but meaningful. Not loud, but steady. Not full of everyone, but full of the right ones. Sartre believed that real existence begins when you accept this responsibility, that your life is yours to shape, choose, and define. Not through applause. Not through validation, not through endless self-sacrifice, but through conscious, intentional living. You stop asking, who thinks about me, and start asking, what kind of person am I becoming? You stop clinging to people and start connecting with purpose. You stop waiting for others to see your worth and start acting like someone who already knows it. And the most beautiful part, once you build your life from authenticity, from clarity, from solitude, from your own truth, the people who belong in your world will come. Not because they need you, not because you're convenient, but because they see the real you and choose you anyway. That's the kind of connection that survives distance. That's the kind of presence people remember. That's the kind of life Sartre believed leads to true freedom. Take a breath. Because if you understand this, your entire life can shift from this moment forward. If this spoke to you, if it opened something inside you, don't leave without subscribing. This channel is where you grow, where you think deeper, and where you finally become the person you are meant to be. Hit subscribe and stay on this journey with me.